This is our war. And this is our plan of attack.
Banks have become an essential threat to our democracy. So consider this justice.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the internet. Please help support this station so this battle can continue forward. Revolution Radio! Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Any commercial advertising you may hear in this program is of the sole discretion and benefit of the host of whose program you are listening to. Revolution Radio does not endorse any commercial products, nor does it accept monetary compensation for on-air advertising of commercial products, nor will it ever. We are and shall remain 100% listener supported. Any product advertising on this program are considered used at buyer risk, and Revolution Radio shall not be held liable for any claims or damages received from any product advertised within this program. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Do you or someone you know suffer from poor circulation, shortness of breath, or chest pains? Are you looking for a more natural solution to help overcome these problems? People tell us that after just a few months taking Extendivite, their doctors have noticed unexplainable improvements in their overall health. For more information, visit heartdrop.com or call 1-877-928-8822.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
And tell them Nighthawk sent you, because if you call this number and tell them Nighthawk sent you, you'll get $5 off your first order at extendovite.com. Thank you. The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Do you feel as if you don't belong? Do you know you were meant for something more? Well, you were. Knowledge of who you are and where you really are from is within your reach. Join Janet Carol Lesson and Dr. Sasha Lesson as they search for the answers as they open up the Stargate to the cosmos.
Aloha, everybody, and welcome to Stargate to the Cosmos. And I'm your host, Janet Carol Lesson, with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Alex Lesson. And we are here on Revolution.radio with our producer, Thomas Becker. And today we're going to talk to Dr. Joseph Burkes, who is a retired internal medicine physician and a lifelong volunteer peace and social justice activist. During the 60s and 70s, he participated in the U.S. civil rights and anti-Vietnam War movements. In the 80s, he was an activist in Physicians for Social Responsibility, the global umbrella organization for PSR, the International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War, won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1985 for their efforts to inform people and government leaders about the medical dangers of nuclear war and the nuclear arms race. He is a volunteer UFO investigator since 1992 and currently serves as a medical consultant for the Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters, also known as FREE. And for 5 years in the 1990s, Dr. Burkes was a working group coordinator for Dr. Stephen Greer's Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind initiative and has done field work with a Peruvian group known as Rahma. He continues to promote the worldwide efforts of activists that he calls the Contact Underground. Dr. Burkes' writing focus on the mechanisms of contact. These include his virtual experience theory, which describes the role of illusion during close encounters, and the intelligence-counterintelligence model for UFO investigations. And he is the co-author of a book called Paths to Contact, and he has co-authored a chapter of medical healings with researcher Preston Dennett in the free compendium Beyond UFOs. So before I bring on Dr. Burkes, I'd like to bring on Dr. Sasha Alex-Lesson. Aloha, my dear. Are you there?
Hi. Yeah, and hi, Joe. I read your stuff all the time, and I know that we have very similar. I'm a peacenik too, and looking at the terrible things that have been happening in our country and realizing you're the right person to talk to. Some of the things that Robert Reich has talked about is annulling the fraudulent election, so we get rid of Pence and his and his Cotton Mather trip, as well as Trump, versus the possibilities of impeachment and the counter possibilities that Trump will declare some kind of national emergency. And I'm very, very concerned, and I really would like to open your head about what we can do about this terrible situation our country and the world has gotten into.
Well, that's quite a
Go ahead.
From UFOs to the terrible situation that's facing us politically. Maybe we can get to that later on in the program. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's what we should get to later on. I know Sasha likes to start.
No, I think it's all part of the same thing. It's all part of the same thing about whether or not we're going to have a disclosure, because UFO disclosure means that we're going to uncover heinous crimes by lots of people. All
right, I'm gonna follow your lead. Okay.
Okay.
I'm going to talk to you about the politics of contact from my point of view. First of all, one of the features of the phenomena is that it's the gift that keeps giving. And in some ways, it's like all things to all people. So to the military-industrial complex, those people who are in the conflict business, UFOs represent a potential bonanza because under conditions of disclosure, it's likely that they would want to increase the space-based weapons that the U.S. and Russia already has and use them to turn what we have now a Cold War with the alien intelligences where UFOs have been shot down or attempts at shooting them down have gone on almost continuously for the last 70 years and progressed to a higher level of conflict. So for government scientists who are working back engineering ET craft, the phenomena is also an opportunity to do just tremendous cutting edge science. And for people who are fundamentalist Christians and say that the phenomena is demonic, it gives them a chance to project the hostility which they have in considerable amounts onto the so-called aliens, who in my opinion are attempting to assist us. And finally, we get to someone like myself who's a diehard do-gooder from the 60s. I like the term you used, peacenik. I haven't heard that term used for decades. That refers to beatniks who were the beat generation before the hippies in the 1950s. And so when we would go out demonstrating, the media would try to portray us as not beatniks, but beatniks for peace or peaceniks. So I have been politically active since childhood. When I was growing up, they were detonating nuclear bombs in the atmosphere, and was getting into the radiation from the fallout. Was getting into the deciduous teeth of children, and a worldwide movement of women primarily, led by women, demonstrated to end atmospheric testing because the strontium-90, which acts like calcium, was getting into the bones and the deciduous teeth of the children. And women were sending them into laboratories, and famous pediatrician Dr. Spock, sponsored the studies, and they found radiation and strontium-90 in children's teeth as a result of drinking milk that had been radiated from fallout. So women demonstrated, and my mom was active politically, and I, as a little boy, marched along with her. And women were successful in ending atmospheric testing in 1963 when the United States and the former Soviet Union signed the Limited Test Ban Treaty.
Yay!
So, yes, that's right. A great step forward. Helen Caldicott, who was a physician from Australia, she was a leader in the anti-nuclear movement that was resurrected in the 1980s after the 3 Mile Island incident, where there was a limited meltdown, and then also Chernobyl, there was a tremendous meltdown and polluting the atmosphere and killing, in terms of inducing cancer, probably thousands of people. And so one of the things that Dr. Helen Caldicott said was never underestimate the power of women when they are aroused. And I like that slogan because she was a charismatic leader, and she certainly spurred on a very successful anti-nuclear movement that I was part of in the 1980s. Our umbrella organization was International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War, and American and Soviet doctors met. I went to the former Soviet Union 4 times to meet with physicians and health workers, and we had a worldwide physicians' peace movement. Our slogan was, we had many slogans, but one was, we must prevent what we cannot cure, and there is no cure for nuclear war. So that was the struggle that I got into just a few years before I became involved with the UFO situation. But I have to say that in terms of the analysis that I have, it is primarily political. I believe that this phenomena, UFOs and the intelligences behind them, they fundamentally threaten all terrestrial elites. I'm talking about the military, I'm talking about the captains of industry, I'm talking about politicians, and even some aspects of organized religion. And what I mean when I say the military is that UFOs are clearly able to fly circles around the Top Gun fighters that the United States sends up to try to monitor them or on occasion shoot them down. And so if the government proceeds to go forward in its limited disclosure policy, which, and again, I recommend everyone in the listening audience get a hold of Grant Cameron's wonderful book, Managing Magic, in which he describes how for the last 70 years, along with the ridicule and denial, there's also been a back-channel program to slowly try to acclimate the American people, using the UFO subculture as a vehicle to acclimate the American people and the people of the world about the reality of UFOs. And so now we see even greater efforts to alert the people that UFOs are real, and they're really important, in the work of Tom DeLonge. Before Tom DeLonge, there was Dr. Stephen Greer, and before him, there was Bill Moore. And all these 3 individuals are called messiahs by Grant Cameron in his book, Managing Magic, because they have been entrusted with the responsibility of getting out important information about the reality of this phenomena. And they also have very high opinions of themselves and probably suffer from hubris, which is another aspect of the way in which the intelligence services operate. But that's getting back to another topic, which we can explore maybe later. So from my point of view, this phenomena is of great importance because it can possibly serve as a vehicle to address some of the, shall we say, well, at least what our government and our masters call the insurmountable problems that our culture is facing. And when I say insurmountable problems, I'm talking about the problems of war, I'm talking about the problems of environmental pollution and global warming, racism, and poverty. Because if UFOs are real, they're not flying on fossil fuel. They don't have someone inside the belly of the UFO stoking coal, shoveling it into a furnace. And they don't have pistons. They're using some kind of advanced, perhaps it's zero-point energy or so-called free energy that exists within the vacuum of space. Whatever their propulsion systems are, if under conditions of world peace, and that's necessary because if these technologies are introduced into our culture without world peace, they would be used for weapons, and they would be even more devastating than the atomic bomb. So under conditions of world peace, and based on social justice, I believe that's necessary, then these technologies can be safely downloaded into our technological culture. And that would end poverty. It would end pollution. And these are very important issues that are threatening the wealth, the health, the safety of millions of people. And we have to say that politicians are also threatened by UFOs, because the UFOs, when they're flying around, they don't see borders. They see one planet, one people, the human race. And if we're allowed to know the reality of the phenomenon, and that these intelligences, at least in my opinion, are here to offer us limited assistance. And remember, they're not Jesus Christ in the spaceship to save us, and they're not Darth Vader. They're here to hurt us. But they are offering limited assistance. And if the people on the planet realize that we're one planet on one homeland, nationalism, which is the glue that holds together modern society, would slowly be undermined. And the national politicians, who make a business out of controlling us by fear, the Russians are told by their leaders the Americans are the bad guys. Americans are told that the Russians are the bad guys. That all this fighting and conflict would be undermined when people on this planet look up at the UFOs and say, my gosh, they don't see us as Americans. They see us as human. One planet, one people. And that was a slogan that was promoted by, it still is promoted by the Baha'i faith. I've embraced a slogan even higher than that, and that is one universe, one cosmos, one people. So my participation in this project is, in a sense, trying to bring brotherhood and sisterhood, make it large, and extend it out into the cosmos. So how's that for an intro?
I love that. That's now what's interesting. What's your name? Joseph. Okay, we were just talking yesterday to Daniel Cooper and a couple days ago, and he has just patented so he's working on the free energy systems, and it's the first level one, the warp one drive is magnetism. Mm-hmm. And so they're working on a system, and I invited him, let's all figure out how we do this, because if we take away fossil fuels, then, what's our we're going to operate on? If we do it on one side and give it to the Arabs and they have free energy systems, and then they stop producing oil, then, we're going to have our prices go up. So we have to look at a whole system that gets implemented when we have these technologies and we release them. But apparently we already have had variations on it. That was what Tesla was about, and there's been subsequent releases. But lately NASA did a peer review of this free energy system that's coming out by Dan Cooper, and he's right now working with manufacturers. So they're working on a grid size system, and they're going to, and he's already talked about this, so I'm free to say this, and they're going to talk to the Arabs and give them desalinization at the same time, so they can go from fossil fuels to growing crops, because they need water. They need water more than they need oil, right? So they really need water. So they're going to give them, thousands of gallons of water.
I'm gonna take the prerogative of the guest and interrupt the host. And
Go ahead, your turn.
Is that although we talk about free energy and the benefits, there has to be a tremendous transformation of Earth civilization in order to integrate these new technologies into our existing society. If they brought in free energy tomorrow, they would be weaponized almost immediately and would also cause the ruin of our entire economy. Hundreds of millions of people are involved in the fossil fuel industry, and they have to be taken care of. They have to they have an income. They have to take care of their families. So although there are limited free energy devices that are being worked on, some of which are being monitored by the intelligence services, I doubt there's going to be any major breakthrough unless there's a spiritual transformation of our society where we can evolve into a people that is not at war with itself. Let's face it. Nationalism is the name of the game, and UFO intelligence is just, they didn't, as Stanton Friedman said, the famous ufologist, they didn't just fall off the cabbage wagon. You know, they're very well prepared for their encounters with us, and I can talk about some of my encounters as well later on in the program. Right,
and I'm a lifelong experiencer, and I've been involved in some of the secret space program aspects of it as well, which is another whole topic about what's real, what isn't. But it comes into the equation when we have these discussions. So I like what you're saying, because, and that's the whole catch-22. How do we, we have these technologies, how do we implement them and, not leave people
we don't have them.
in the streets?
We don't have them. It's likely that the military-industrial complex has made advances, and they're going to keep that secret. But what we are seeing is a gradual disclosure process. Grant Cameron calls it acclimatization or acclimation. It's a kind of leak, small leaks of information through those three people that I mentioned, and Dr. Greer, Bill Moore, and now, of course, Tom DeLonge. And so this is going to be a process that's going to unfold not over years, but probably decades and even generations. Now, that things may change rapidly if we face a series of crises, and we are facing them in the not-too-distant future because the oceans are rising. We're going to be major parts of the planet will not be able to grow food, and it's estimated that by the turn of by mid-century, tens of millions of people in countries like Bangladesh will be starving, and when Australia, the United States, and Canada, Russia that make a lot of wheat will probably be in bad shape because the climate is changing, making it difficult to grow crops in many regions. So we are facing an enormous crisis, but free energy is sort of hypothetical. There are more practical issues that we need to address.
Well, I just want to say one more thing on that. It's like that was just the argument. See, we die at a rate of 100,000 people a day from things that are curable from, and the fossil fuel environment is toxic, and that's why we're dying. And you're a doctor, so you understand this. It's killing us, and it's killing our oceans. So I don't think we have the luxury to wait decades for this. I think what's going to happen is, and I know that my they're not whistleblowers, they're witnesses. My witnesses are coming forth, and they're, they've done the evaluations, and we're killing our planet. We're killing ourselves, and we're dying. So it probably be accelerated. Yeah. Because we can't afford to kill these people.
A lot of very powerful statements, but as a physician, and I try to be conservative in my proclamation, because it's just better when you deal with patients not to scare them, and also to be in your judgment. We throw the term that we are destroying the planet. Let me tell you something. This planet has been through a hell of a lot. Hundreds of millions of years ago, it was snowball Earth, where it was so cold that except for the equator, the entire planet was covered with ice. And then volcanic activity kicked up, and it melted snowball Earth. And then there was also runaway global warming for periods of time. And 90% of the species on the planet disappeared. And however, the capacity of this planet to generate new life is absolutely phenomenal. And it is an expression, in my judgment, of hubris, excessive pride, when we say we are destroying the planet. We are not destroying the planet. We are destroying our civilization. Because with mass famine, war, pestilence that will come from our unwise ways, human civilization will be reduced to barbarism. But there will be some nests of humans around, and there certainly will be animals that will be around. And over time, this planet that has a tremendous capacity to generate new life will repopulate the planet. But let's not go down that route. It's bad enough to destroy civilization.
Right. Well, I like humanity. I think we're an interesting species, and I think there's other ways of doing it besides, this self-destruction. Yeah, the planet will be fine without us. There's even a book.
the Earth
will be fine. Go ahead, honey.
Oh, I was just studying the Venusian material, and it seems that Valiant Thor offered Eisenhower medical technology, and Ike said, "No, I that ain't going to do me no good. I want to make a deal with someone that'll give me something I can weaponize. No deal, Valiant."
So you're
Right.
concerned. Is there a question there? Because I'm maybe you could repeat the statement.
No, I'm just doing is I am in agreement with your assessment that militarization of any technology is a huge danger. And I was just giving supportive evidence.
Sure. I think that's true, and there have been concerted attempts to shoot down UFOs, and they have the means to defend themselves, and there have been losses, I suspect, on both sides. It's been rumored that the crash in Roswell was related to the development of a very powerful new radar array in New Mexico, which was where the atomic bomb was being developed and tested in the 1940s, as well as early rocketry. Werner von Braun and his group of Nazi scientists came over and were there in White Sands missile test range. And so you have a tremendous interest, I suspect, occurring in the 1940s as we developed these technologies. The intelligence behind the phenomena, the so-called aliens, took a special interest, and that started the modern UFO age. But now we've moved along quite a bit, and now we have a different situation where starting in 1974 with Mission Rahma, that's a Peruvian contact organization, you have groups of what I would call enlightened individuals going out in an attempt to interact with the phenomena. And then some 16, 17 years later, you have Dr. Stephen Greer's CSETI organization, and I was part of that process. The Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind initiative is still ongoing, and as is Rahma, and using consciousness techniques, meditation, thought projection, people are going out in groups and are having limited interactions with the phenomena, where there's both signaling with lights as well as limited telepathic communication, which I've had, and it's quite astounding. On two occasions when I was doing field work with my team in Southern California, the first one was in October of 1993. I was with my team in Joshua Tree National Monument, a high desert, spectacularly beautiful, pristine desert, and near the base of Queen Mountain. I, while meditating, got a telepathic override where I visualized a UFO coming towards us in our mind's eye, and at the level of knowledge, I knew that UFO was going to show up in the northwest at exactly 2 a.m. And because we had been alerted by our supervising physician, Dr. Greer, that such communication was possible, I was, shall we say, prepared to accept this information. I shared that with my team. I said to them, "Hey guys, showtime is 2 a.m. I'll take the first shift resting, and you guys wake me up at 10 to 2. Because these were all-night vigils. And sure enough, they got me up at 10 to 2, and at 2 o'clock, right on the money, northwest, one red glowing UFO, totally silent, went past our position at a oblique angle, changed to go due east, accelerating to hundreds of miles an hour, totally silent across the desert. If that had been a jet on afterburners, the roar would have been tremendous. And that was not, shall we say, the American Air Force on maneuvers. So there's this new situation where enlightened contact activists, or I call them contact workers. I prefer the term contact worker to the term contactee, because the words ending in E are usually passive, like employee or payee or flunky. Passive. Whereas words ending in ER are active, like worker, actor, singer. So I prefer the term contact worker or contact activist to being called contactees, which are usually, attached to the C word, which is cult. They usually refer to our network as a contactee cults. Well, I don't believe I'm part of any cult. I believe I'm part of a worldwide movement of contact activists that see this phenomenon as important, as promoting peace, cooperation, and brotherhood and sisterhood, as I mentioned before, made large.
Well, that's great. What about this group, the Peruvian group? What kind of, tell us about them. I've heard little bits. Is that the group that goes up to Mount Shasta every year?
They have been going to Mount Shasta, but they got started in 1974. Sixto Pascual was a university student there, and his dad was interested in UFOs and also in telepathy. And there was a congress that was held in Lima that Sixto attended with his brother Charlie, or Carlos. And he was a practitioner of yoga. And because his dad had promoted this meeting where telepathy was discussed, Sixto attempted to have telepathic communication with the so-called aliens. He meditated, and he found himself writing without being able to consciously control his hand. Automatic writing is a form of channeling. And he started getting communications with an extraterrestrial called Oxal. And in his parents' home, Sixto came together with friends of the family as well as his friends, and they started asking questions of this extraterrestrial who claimed that he was from the moon of Jupiter called Ganymede, and the aliens, so-called aliens, called it Morlun. And so one of the people in the audience was asked Sixto that if this extraterrestrial was real and telepathic, she wanted to, the extraterrestrial, tell her what page she was up to in her book. Well, to the surprise of everyone, not only did the channeled message give the page number that she was up to, but it also described what the book was about and what the young lady's opinion was of what she was reading. So that established, without too much doubt, that they were dealing with some kind of advanced intelligence, telepathic. But then other people said, well, how do we know you're extraterrestrial? Maybe you're from some demonic astral hell or something. So they wanted to have a test. And what they did was they decided to go out into the desert, and Chilca is a place about 70 miles or 70 kilometers from Lima. It's in the middle of the desert. And they had planned an encounter there. Well, the young people that went there to meet the extraterrestrials were not very well prepared. When a hamburger-shaped UFO about 100 feet across came out from behind the mountain and beamed a powerful light on them, these young people panicked. and they got the message that they were going to have to meditate and develop spiritually. They were also advised to eat vegetarian food in preparation for their field work. When they went back subsequently, Sixto Pascual reported being taken through a dimensional portal called a Zendra, and he found himself on Ganymede, which is an ET base on Jupiter's moon. He believes that he spent several days there, but when he went back through the Zendra, only about 15 or 20 minutes had elapsed. So there was some distortion of time and space along with this experience on the moon. And then later, in subsequent encounters, several of the young activists went through the Zendra, and they met with a council, at least reportedly, met with a council of extraterrestrials on Ganymede. So that tells the beginning of that organization. But they flourished through emigration. Peruvian activists spread all over the world. They had cells, teams in Spain, even in the former Soviet Union, in the United States. And I got to work with them starting in 1993 when I met a dental surgeon, retired, named Dr. Fernando Limaco. And he invited me to do field work with them. And I had some amazing, wonderful encounters going up to Mount Shasta or near Mount Shasta, where they have some property, and they schedule what are called in the United States CE4s, but which I'm correction CE5s, human-initiated, human-empowered contact. I prefer the term HICE, H-I-C-E, human-initiated contact experience over CE5 for a number of reasons, which can discuss later. So that's Rahma in a nutshell. I can talk about some amazing encounters on stage. One of my friends is a retired 747 pilot, Captain Joe Vallejo, and he was up there in August of 1994 when they opened the dimensional portal, and this is in Shasta County, near Mount Shasta, and in groups of 7, contact activists from Rahma went into the dimensional portal and got to experience what it was like. They weren't teleported, but this is very real. You know, Joe Vallejo, thousands of hours of flying experience. When he was a 747 pilot, he was commanding a vessel worth $100 million with the lives of several hundred people under his control. And, he described that experience. I found him a very credible witness.
So that's what Greg Cameron wanted. He said, I want to go through a portal. Have you been through a portal? How many people have been through this portal to go? I guess one goes right to Ganymede.
In terms of the mission to Ganymede, I'm only aware of several, one or two, well, at least 2. But in terms of the mission Rahma worked near Mount Shasta, I'll tell you a little bit about that, and then I'll get to my experience. Okay. So what happened was, Joe Vallejo was invited to go to this remote location. Instructions how to get there are not written. They're not sent by email. They have to be communicated verbally on the phone. And it's from Southern California. It's quite a long ride, 10 hours at least. And Joe got up there, and Rahma has their protocols that involve fasting and eating vegetarian food, as well as meditation and chanting. And using their chanting, Om, Fernando Lamaco leading them, was able to open up a dimensional portal. And what Joe witnessed, along with some 50 other contact activists, was a purple light appeared in the field not too far from where they were sitting and meditating. And the purple light then formed a doorway, and then a small, it was not clearly seen, but it almost looked like a little shack behind the portal. And it was the portal doorway was made of purple light. And in groups of 7, they went inside while the rest of the contact activists were chanting Om, Om outside. Well, Joe was in the last group of 7 to go in that portal, and by that time, the people outside were getting kind of tired. And as they entered, and he described this space inside the portal as being very tight, almost like an elevator, and they had to crowd together. The walls were indistinct, and sound was not propagated in the normal way. Their voices, when they spoke, were distorted as if they were underwater, or the density of the atmosphere was different. And as the group outside got more and more fatigued from chanting Om, 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 as the voices got weaker, to the dismay of Joe and his 6 other contact workers that were inside the portal, they noticed that the portal was beginning to collapse. The walls were becoming very, shall we say, they weren't very distinct. And the people inside the portal got alarmed because they weren't sure what was going to happen to them if the portal collapsed with them still inside. So in response, they started chanting with mucho vigor and Om, Om, Om. And as they chanted with more force, the walls reformed, and they were able to exit the portal. So that gives you a feel for what a dimensional portal is like. They were not teleported to Ganymede or anywhere else, but such things, I believe, are very real. Now, when I got to Rahma to work with them, first in 1994, and then in 2004 and 2006, I had a portal experience. One of the things they warned us was that you should not expect the portal to match your preconceived notions of what it's supposed to be. And so we were chanting by a stream, and as we chanted, I noticed that the sound that was propagated by the stream, which was just, was not much of current, it produced very little sound as the water flowed by the stream. But as we continued to chant, the air became more conductive of sound. And all of a sudden, I'm realizing that the stream is now, it just sounds like a river. The sound was amplified tremendously. And as I stood there standing, I felt a force pulling me forward. Now, maybe it was just because I was tired and I had been chanting for a long time. And I wasn't a teenager at that point, 2004. I'm well into my sixth decade of life. But in any case, I got to experience that aspect of the portal, the change in the density of the sound, and what I thought was a force that was moving me forward. So that's my limited experience with portals. But if you ever get Grant Cameron on, or Enrique Villanueva, who's a Rahma activist, a good friend of mine, they can tell you more about exciting developments with the portals that have happened in the last 5 years. My portal experience goes back just to 2006 and 2009 was the last time I did field work with Rahma. It's been almost 10 years.
Oh, it's been 10 years. Yeah, I know Grant, that was his wish the last time I spoke to him. He says, I really want to go through a portal, and I haven't talked to Grant for quite a while, and I just wondered if you're aware if he got his wish to go through a portal. Apparently he hadn't been through a portal, just been a part of other people's experiences. You haven't talked to him about it. Okay.
You'll have to talk to him about it. I've heard what he has to say, but I'm not going to recapitulate his excellent reports that are on the internet. And you can also visit White House UFO YouTube channel, White House UFO Grant Cameron, and you can see one of his reports on the Rahma experience at Mount Shasta.
Yeah, I did interview him about that. Okay, so all right, so where do you want to go next? You had some other experiences you wanted to?
Oh, absolutely. First of all, you say that the intelligence behind the phenomena is not only totally telepathic, but they have access to, in my judgment, our complete storehouse of memories. They also have the capacity to produce illusion. And this is something that I've been developing over the last 20, 25 years. I call it the virtual experience model. It's the role of illusion as a mechanism of contact. And when I started doing the work in 1992, from within and by the way, we had contact immediately. CSATI director, Dr. Greer, gave a talk in the San Fernando Valley that was attended by about 100 people. Out of those 100, he did a demonstration field work with about 40 of them. And as when Dr. Greer was hot in the 1990s, he couldn't go anywhere without UFOs showing up. That information has changed quite a bit for a variety of reasons, which we can discuss and some will speculate on. But something similar apparently happened to Sixto Wells as well. In any case, we had a sighting of the Golden Globe, and we were working out of the Santa Susana Pass, which is in Chatsworth. It's between the Simi Valley and the San Fernando Valley. And during the first week, as we're doing this field work, I started seeing things that were very strange in the sky, not just during field work, but also in my neighborhood and while driving home. For example, during the first week, I was getting on the 405 freeway. It was 5 p.m. in the afternoon. And as I'm getting on in the freeway, I see a plane flying above the very low to the freeway, probably less than 100 feet up. And it was the strangest plane that I ever seen. First of all, it looked like something out of the circus. You know the kind of routine where you have clowns that pile out of an airplane? Well, this plane was small. It was maybe 15 feet long. The wings were short. It was made of wood. It was stubby wings. And the plane was not flying very fast, about 50, 60 miles an hour against traffic overhead, flying overhead. And it was painted fire engine red with yellow lightning bolts on the wings. And it had an open canopy and no windscreen. And where a pilot should have been sitting, in front of the plane, there was no one. It was outrageous. It was impossible. And I believe that was the beginning of a journey that taught me how UFO intelligence uses illusion as a mechanism of contact. So,
wow, what year was that when you had that experience?
September 1992. The first week I started volunteering as a contact worker. Dr. Greer and I were both working emergency at the time. I had met him at UFO Expo West. I volunteered to be the working group coordinator. I attended a workshop of his in West Palm Beach, and it was in June of 1992 that I got to see my first UFO during this demonstration of field work. In those days, the training was very inexpensive. Dr. Greer was working as a physician, making a couple of $100,000 a year as an ER doctor. So he didn't really need a lot of money from field work. $40 to join CSETI and $40 for the workshop. And you were guaranteed in those days to see a UFO. And I attended many of those early workshops. Everyone, there was anomalous structured craft consistent with our definition of UFOs. And so from the very beginning, our team was having contact. At one point, we were doing field work in the Santa Susana Pass, and powerful lights beamed down upon us from Rocky Peak State Park, which was on the other side of the freeway. It's a wilderness state park, rattlesnake infested, and these two powerful lights were directed at us. One was pointing at us, and the other was pointing across the San Fernando Valley. These were very sophisticated lights, several feet across. They had strobe effect. They could, in a fraction of a second, could strobe at you. They could. They had variable rheostat effect, where they would increase with intensity, get brighter and brighter, and then could gradually fade out. And then they also had a very powerful solid beam. These lights were far more sophisticated than the very primitive halogen lanterns. We use a 500,000 candle lantern. And one of the people on my team got the message subjectively, I guess you call it telepathically. And he suggested to me, why don't you try the following? He suggested that I use a burst of 3 flashes. The first flash, then I would wait 3 seconds. 1 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000. Then 2 flashes, and then 3 seconds later, 3 flashes. I tried this out once, beaming it towards the lights on the hillside above us in Rocky Peak State Park. And the second time I started the sequence, something very unusual happened. These were primitive halogen lanterns. They were not strobes. And it would take a fraction of a second, close to a second, for the light to fade out once you release the trigger on. I always feel a little funny calling it the light bazooka. That was the commercial name. Because here we are, peace activists. We're buying products called. That was kind of funny. Anyways, as I was releasing my finger, and the light was fading out, immediately I was hit by a strobe. So I would go flash, and then I'd get a strobe. I'd wait 1 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000, flash, flash, and then again, before the light faded, strobe, immediately. And then I waited another 3 seconds, 1 1,000, 2 1,000, and then I went flash, 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 and again, 3 responses back to my light. Are you still there?
Yes, we're listening.
Okay.
Yeah, we're listening.
So I could not get anyone on my team to reproduce that pattern of signaling. It was as if there was a circuit, electronic switch between my finger, and as soon as I released it, the intelligence behind those lights knew what was going on, and they responded in kind. Well, that was very exciting. But even stranger things happened that night. One of the people on my team, she's passed away, Shirley Jones, she was a respiratory therapist in our hospital. And it was amazing the way the synchronicities occurred, where all of a sudden people were finding each other and finding their way to my team. We had a very powerful team, by the way. We had 3 physicians. We had Joe Vallejo, I mentioned, a 747 pilot. We had 2 PhD psychologists. We had a Harvard graduate who also had a master's degree in psychology, and he was a screenwriter these were very highly educated, very successful individuals who somehow, by chance, all came together to form my team. I suspect UFO intelligence played a role in that. But in any case, Shirley Jones was a respiratory therapist, and had an early shift that night. She had an early shift the next morning. And so she had to leave our team a little bit early. And while we were interacting with the lights that I just described, strobing at us, she was already in her Astro van driving across the San Fernando Valley. About 2 to 3 miles away from us, while we were still up there on the ridge, signaling back and forth, she felt her car shaking violently. And she and I both spent many years in New York City, as you might detect from my New York accent, which occasionally when I get excited comes out. But in any case, she said to me, "Oh, I thought I went over a bunch of potholes, like the kind they had in New York." And I knew exactly what she meant. Her whole car was shaking. Well, she stopped the vehicle. She thought maybe she went over a series of railroad tracks. She got out of the car very carefully. This is 1 o'clock in the morning. The mean streets of Southern California are potentially dangerous for people traveling at night, especially a woman alone. So she looked around her vehicle, and she found that there were no potholes. And she looked up to the Santa Susana Pass, which is where we were, and the light that had been beaming toward her started signaling at her. And she got to see the light. So the UFO intelligence, perhaps by their command of electromagnetism, was able to shake her vehicle. I'm speculating, but this is what I think was going on. And she then was able to interact with the lights. So this is an incredible first week of contact experiences. If you have any questions, I'll let you ask them now, and then I will proceed.
Okay. Sasha, your turn. I talked.
Well, I'm interested in the idea of the coherent field of a group of meditators or people focused versus an individual. My colleague Chris Hardy says she can be around a groups of meditators and see how far their coherent field goes. And so I wonder whether it makes a difference if you're in a group and with a concentrated focus or not.
Yes, I think there is a big difference. What do they say? God helps those who help themselves, and he especially helps those who work together in groups. When a group of meditators are working together, the telepathic signal, I believe, is amplified. If the team is united and is celebrating what we call oneness. The idea of consciousness is something that plays an important role. Consciousness is something we experience, all of us, to be awake and to know that we're awake. But there's aspects of consciousness that transcend the individual. We call it cosmic consciousness or universal consciousness. It's an energy field of information that if you are a non-materialist, if you are spiritually seeking, then you would say that consciousness, this universal aspect of energy and information, is not only the stuff that holds the universe together, but it is the founding principle. And so by celebrating oneness, by meditating, and by building the unity of a team of meditators, it's been my experience that you get better results. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And the other question, that answers it quite beautifully. The other question I have, because we keep getting this sort of thing, Sherry Wild and others say, you want to join Galactic Society, but you still eat beings. And you said that the Rahmas were also into fasting and vegetarian foods. I'm wondering, what's your whole take on vegetarianism?
Let me tell you a story about that. It's I call it the poor man's security service. It's poor man's security test. Joe is a rough and ready guy. He did read all the esoteric literature and the channeled material from Latin America. He's bilingual, originally from Cuba. Captain Joe Viejo. And when I first got involved with Rahma in 1993, he was also on his own, was flying up to the Bay Area and meeting with Fernando Lamaco. And in preparation for going out into the field, they would meditate on and eat vegetables or just have vegetable broth, and would spend many hours on an entire weekend. They'd meet Saturday, and then they'd meditate for 10 hours, and they would visualize the fieldwork location that they were going to in an attempt to communicate. So Joe, who was used to eating meat, and although he's spiritual, wasn't particularly religious, he said to me, "Joe, I don't get what's going on with these Rahma people. Like, they're meditating and they're eating just vegetable broth. And, I think it's like a cult." He used the C word. I said, wait. You got to remember that the Rahma people, many of them are undocumented workers. They don't have their papers. And they're letting people into their group, some of whom may have been infiltrators from the military-industrial complex. In fact, one woman later did identify herself as a spy. And so that was a real issue with security for the teams. So you don't want to have people in your group that have a hidden agenda, because it will interfere with the contact.
Oh, hold that thought. We're going to come back to the story about the infiltrator.
Okay, yeah.
I'll be back in 5 minutes and start commercial break. Thank you.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
In breaking news, a visiting Syrian diplomat reported today that their population is evolving rapidly and advancing into a fifth-dimensional consciousness. They are seeking peace with all cosmic cultures, which may mean that the Earth will be asked to join the prestigious Galactic Federation of Light Alliances. Please join Debbie West and Michael Hathaway on Lost Knowledge, Saturdays, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in Studio A, for the latest breaking news on the Star Visitor's peaceful contact and the ongoing project of cleansing the Earth.
Who are you? I am the architect. I created the Matrix. I've been waiting for you. Why am I here? You are the eventuality of an anomaly which, despite my sincerest efforts, I have been unable to eliminate from what is otherwise a harmony of mathematical precision, which has led you inexorably here. You haven't answered my question. The Matrix is older than you know. As you are undoubtedly gathering, the anomaly is systemic, creating fluctuations in even the most simplistic equation. Choice. The problem is choice.
Right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Be here Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Time for Private Eye Matrix Revealed with Monique Lassonde.
Hello, my name is Mr. Rowe. I am the host of Reality Extraction on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I utilize logic, intellect, and magic to methodically atomize, vivisect, analyze, examine, study, scrutinize, and extract an essence of reality from a fog of illusion and confusion. You can find me on Studio B every Thursday at 1700 hours Pacific Time. That's 8 p.m. Eastern. No topic taboo, no subject too strange. I strive to take a neutral standpoint during the dissection of the topic at hand. That's Reality Extraction with Mr. Rowe on Revolution Radio.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Thanks for tuning in to Revolution Radio. Here at Revolution Radio, we are listener-sponsored and commercial-free. But there still are bills to pay. In order to raise some needed funds to cover the cost, our station is offering a silver special. In the continental United States for a $60 donation, or in Alaska, Hawaii, or Canada for a $70 donation, we will send you an uncirculated 2018 1-ounce pure silver Eagle. The $70 donation, the extra 10 is to cover shipping, by the way, outside of the continental United States. When making the donation, you must put Silver Eagle promo in the notes on the donation. And thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio at revolution.radio and freedomslips.com. Without you, there is no us. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Collision Course is back. Schedule will be on Revolution Radio every Saturday night, 6 to 8 p.m. You get outer space. You get honest answers, real researchers, truthful answers, and a place to engage with questions. Take part in the discussion. Revolution Radio on freedomslips.com hosts Collision Course every Saturday from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific Time.
Do you or someone you know suffer from poor circulation, shortness of breath, or chest pains? Are you looking for a more natural solution to help overcome these problems? People tell us that after just a few months taking Extendivite, their doctors have noticed unexplainable improvements in their overall health. For more information, visit heartdrop.com or call 1-877-928-8822.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
And tell them Nighthawk sent you, because if you call this number and tell them Nighthawk sent you, you'll get $5 off your first order at extendovite.com. Thank you. The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Aloha and welcome back to Stargate to the Cosmos, and I'm your host, Janet Kara Lesson, with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Alex Lesson. Our producer is Thomas Becker, and our guest is Joseph Burkes, MD, and we are just heating up and revving up for the second half of our show. But before we get to that, I'd like to remind everybody to please go over to the donation button on revolution.radio and make a donation and drop us a few bucks. And Mad Painter, Thomas Becker, where are we in our fundraising efforts for the last month of 2018? How are we doing?
We have $23.52 and we need $28.50, so that's $498 yet to go, and we're doing pretty good. I'm surprised. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank everybody.
Yes, thank you. Okay, I had to take a little break. You guys were talking, so you were planning what we're going to talk about the next hour. Dr. Lesson, you take a lead.
Yeah, what we were talking about, yes, what we were talking about is that ultimately we're going to need a way big global-wide peace movement, because we're not going to really get the bennies of ETs that want us to succeed and have a peaceful society unless we show that that's what we're really committed to. And so I'd like to know about the current situation and what can be done. In anthropology, my discipline, we say that the basic way that you can sanction institutions is by nullity, by stop participating in institutions that are harmful. And so I would like you to respond to that.
You're talking about institutions, people
like don't be in the armed services and kill people, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, you're touching on an important point, and it has to do with the way in which this phenomena is being addressed by the executive branch of the United States government. See, it's my impression, as I've described earlier in the show, that this phenomena threatens all terrestrial power, military, economic, political, and in some ways fundamental Christian and other Islamic groups who see the phenomena as being demonic. And because in the United States, both the rich man and the poor man are free to sleep under the bridge. That's an expression from France. Because the captains of industry, with their tremendous economic power, can control who is in the short list for people coming up to be president. The interests of the rich are addressed more thoroughly than the needs of the 99% of the rest of the population. So because this phenomena threatens all terrestrial power, and because our government primarily reflects the interest of those ruling elites, not completely, but to a great extent, then the response of the military and the intelligence community is to see this issue as a counterintelligence operation. In other words, UFOs show up over nuclear power plants and over nuclear missile bases and nuclear weapon storage facilities, and in some cases they actually interact with the weapons and make them inoperative. This is seen as an assault on the prized possessions of the American arsenal. Now, as a peace and social justice activist, when I see the so-called aliens doing stuff like that, I say, yeah, right on. Their messages, these are unsafe technologies. The message to me is not they're trying to disarm us so they can attack us, because there's no evidence that they are attacking us at all, even though the modern UFO era has been going on for 70 years. And so I am very much in favor of that kind of a message. But that's not the way the rulers see it. Because the phenomena cannot be controlled by the ruling class. I mean, let's face it. ET can't be bribed. You can't blackmail ET by catching him with some prostitute in a hotel room and filming him, or in Moscow, like the story is that the president supposedly has been compromised by the Russians. The ETs, what we call ETs, the UFOs, whenever they're attacked or chased, they usually don't stand their ground but flee. And they don't seem to mind all the negative publicity they get in all these hate fests that are called alien invasion movies, hate festivals. So this phenomena is a threat to the rulers, but not to Earth's peoples. And because the intelligence services can't control the phenomena, they can't study it, because the phenomena won't sit around for them to interact with. The intelligence services have to study the people who are interacting with them. And so that's why they get involved with the UFO community, and that's why they got involved with Tom DeLonge and Bill Moore in the 1980s, who was a very prominent investigator and co-wrote the book on Roswell. They got this whole issue going in 1980. And they also have they are very much involved with contactees like Dr. Stephen Greer. So in 1990, when CSETI was formed, Dr. Greer shared with his close confidants and coworkers. I joined in 1992, but I was one of 3 core working group coordinators. The 2 others have passed away. Shari Adimak, who was a fierce defender of Dr. Greer, and my good friend Wayne Peterson from the Arizona contact team. Dr. Greer shared with all of us that early on he was approached by people within the aerospace industry who helped him set up the organization of CSETI. And they gave him some pretty good advice as to how to organize in such a way that he wouldn't be taken over and this group would be smashed. But he also excited the interest of people within naval intelligence, one of whom you may have heard his name. Dr. Greer has referred to him as his military advisor, Dr. Commander Will Miller, naval intelligence. I believe he was a briefer at the level of the Joint Chiefs of Staff at one point in his career. And according to Dr. Greer, and I have no reason to doubt this story because I later got to meet Commander Will Miller, both at Dr. Greer's house and as well as in Washington, D.C., when they were holding in 1997 the behind closed door briefings in Washington, and they also went to the Pentagon with Edgar Mitchell. So Dr. Greer told me about how allegedly Commander Will Miller shows up in his home wearing his uniform, all the medals and badges and that you would expect from a Navy commander who's like a colonel in the Army. And what he allegedly said to Dr. Greer was that Dr. Greer was put on Earth to open up Earth civilization to the ET presence. Well, this for someone who has been accused of suffering from hubris, excessive pride, was like mother to me. This is the way they get you. The intelligence services, they are the A team. They all go to charm school. And I met Commander Will Miller, and he was a wonderful companion to spend a few days with at the Greer's home, full of stories, talking about, his work as a naval intelligence officer. And he was on duty working with Dr. Greer and assisting him to set up all the meetings that became the Disclosure Project. So, but I have for many years, it bothered me because, I grew up in the anti-war movement of the Vietnam War. The CIA played a very dark role in terms of Operation Phoenix, assassination program, killing tens of thousands of teachers, administrators, doctors, and nurses, too, who were leaders within the National Liberation Front. It was Murder Incorporated, run by the CIA. All right. I also remembered how the United States CIA played an active role in the invasion of Cuba, and how the CIA helped overthrow the Mossadegh regime in Iran, which led to the Shah in Persia, Iran, which then led to Ayatollah. And the United States was also responsible for overthrowing the Arbenz regime in Guatemala in the 1950s because he threatened the United Fruit Corporation with nationalization. I was not a fan of the CIA. And when in Dr. Greer's home, a high-ranking CIA official, it became like a conversation. They were always talking about Dan Smith, who's the sidekick of a very prominent Ron Pandolfi, very prominent CIA operative. It kind of rubbed me the wrong way because I didn't feel terribly comfortable being around people like that because I had issues, and he was working with them quite closely. He met with former Navy aviator who runs a think tank, John Peterson. The think tank is called the Arlington Institute, and in 1993, Dr. Greer and Peterson were thick as thieves. They were seen together at meetings, and it was Peterson who set up the meeting with the head of the CIA, Woolsey, and that went on in December of 1993. So in order to get this issue out, there are some very forward-thinking people within government that see the UFO cover-up as something that has to be gradually ended. And they've been working with Dr. Greer for many, many years to do that. And now they're working with Tom DeLonge. And if you read, again, I'm pushing Grant Cameron's book. If you don't want to buy the book, you can get the Portal to Ascension webinar that Grant Cameron gave about managing magic, which he goes over the entire history of the acclimation program. And so for many years, I was angry. I didn't understand why he was dealing with these people. I didn't trust them. But now I see that there makes sense. The Disclosure Project, which was a preliminary step, and got a lot of good witnesses out there and raised the level of consciousness. Now we have Tom DeLonge, who unfortunately does not have the spiritual background that Dr. Greer does in terms of the Baha'i faith and seeing this as basically the need to develop a peace movement. Tom DeLonge has a more bellicose, shoot down the UFOs, and he's even boasted that an atmospheric nuclear test done in the 1960s was generated an electromagnetic pulse as a way of shooting down UFOs. Nevertheless, this government program of raising consciousness is setting the stage for, if not disclosure, at least the term that's being used as confirmation. The authorities are going to say the phenomenon is real, we're studying it. Perhaps that's something they should have done in 1947, over 70 years later, but still, it's important work. So that's how I've been led to understand what the Disclosure Project was all about. It's a joint intelligence operation, or you could say Dr. Greer is, perhaps, to use the language of clandestine services, Dr. Greer is an agent of influence who in the past has worked for both the American intelligence services and as well as what I like to call flying saucer central intelligence, the intelligence behind the phenomena. And his work is of historic importance, but he's not a person who has the kind of diplomatic or organizing skills that would allow him to play a prominent role in a peace movement. In order for him to stand up to some of these people in the military-industrial complex, he's got to have a tremendous sense of self-confidence. And he's shared with us conversations, us meaning the working group coordinators. I'm the sole surviving member. With us some of the attempts at intimidation that were directed at him from people within the military-industrial complex that were not supportive of this gradual acclimation program. And so in order to stand up to these people, you've got to have a really strong sense of self. And if it gets too strong, it can lead to hubris, excessive pride. And he's very well skilled for running a small business that is able to get informative videos out. I've enjoyed both his films. I found them very informative. And but that's not the kind of leadership skills that will build a people's movement to address UFO presence in terms of building a peace movement and addressing the fundamental problems that are facing our civilization. So that's my analysis of Dr. Greer. I haven't spoken to him for 25 years. Oh my gosh. Is that no, it's only 20 years, right. I haven't spoken to him since 1990. May of 1998 was when I resigned from CSETI for a variety of reasons, political and personal. The political was that I didn't understand what he was doing with the intelligence services. The personal is personal, and I won't discuss that on the air.
So you've talked about someone having the right organizational skills, and I'm wondering if you're part of that central committee in your own mind.
Oh, but things are at a very low level of development. Free organization. I work as a medical consultant, and if we have time, if not during this program, maybe you'll have a chance to invite me back some future programs.
Oh, sure.
We're going to talk about the amazing cases that we drew from the Free Study Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial and Extraordinary Experiences. And the free organization was founded by Dr. Edgar Mitchell, as well as Rudy Shield, who's an astrophysicist at Harvard, Rodwell, and from Australia, as well as Ray Hernandez. Ray Hernandez is the driving force, and he's done incredible work in the last 5 years. Well, I was waiting for someone like him with his organizational skills for 20 years, and then he finally manifested. So if UFO intel, that's one of my many pet terms that I use to describe them, because I see this as basically an intelligence operation. On one hand, you've got the ruling elites of the planet. On the other side, you've got people, the 99%ers. And I see our work as being kind of intelligence operatives. Well, in order to have a movement, we have to have not Joe Burkes, not Ray Hernandez. We've got to have hundreds and hundreds of activists that are both spiritually oriented and focused, as well as politically astute. Well, UFO intel is not bringing forward those kind of people in the sufficient numbers to make it happen. So in 5 or 10 or 15 years, or whenever the time is right, there will be contact teams who have those skills at the surface and work. So I don't see myself as part of an organizing committee, because right now I just see a handful of people who have the necessary skills in terms of organizing, the political orientation, and seeing problems as they are, not as they would like them to be. And they have the spiritual development to celebrate divine oneness and to work with ET groups at a level of cooperation that is without ego and it's a service rather than a small family business.
So who do you see as some of the potentials? You said you only recognize a couple that might have those abilities.
Well, I'm not going to name names on the radio.
Oh, why not? I don't know. What about like Mary Ann Williamson? She's coming out as candidate for the presidency.
Run a popularity contest from Joe Burke's point of view, MD.
Okay.
Say that when those people manifest, you will know who they are. They will draw to them the kind of network which we are just at the very, very early preliminary stages of. Now, I see this as a struggle that's going to unfold over not decades, but generations. You remember the first meetings to promote women's suffrage were the 1840s. It was 50 years later that finally in New Zealand, I think that women got the right to vote. It wasn't until after this First World War that women won the vote in the U.S. and I think England as well. So that was a struggle of almost 80 years to win women the vote. We're talking about something that's big, even bigger than that. Same with slavery. The struggle to end slavery, which culminated in the Civil War, is still, in a sense, not over because African American people are still savagely exploited and treated terribly by the racist policies of politicians and angry people who don't like them for the color of their skin. So it took over 100 years to end slavery. And routine ritual sacrifice, which was the norm. You know, the Romans had their gladiators, but the Aztecs, they had the policy of conquering other nations, and the defeated warriors by the thousands would have their hearts torn out, and the still beating hearts were offered to the sun god. Well, it took a long time to end those kinds of monstrous patterns of behavior. And if we think we're going to have a cosmic peace movement that's going to manifest, in the next 2 weeks, I better name who the people are who are going to do it. It's just not realistic. That's my opinion.
Oh my God. Anyway, I'm hoping to accelerate it, but I don't really pride myself in being realistic. I think realistic is just going to keep us in the dark ages. I'm looking for something outside of the box to get us where we need to go. Anyway, that's why I interview the experiencers and the secret space program people, because I'm looking for out-of-the-box solution. But I wanted to address something that you said earlier about the ships coming out. I have an insider, a witness, And this also came from Greg Cameron. Greg Cameron had a wonderful, presentation at the where we met, Joe, at Lorien Fenton's, and he said, no, the ETs know what we're thinking before we even think it. So then I had another person confirm. It's like, no, they can't. We can't shoot out anything of theirs. They know in advance. So that, they outthink us. So they can just blink out, or they go too fast. So what happened is they're actually delivering technology because they want us to accelerate.
I will disagree with you. I think their craft can be shot down. They have been shot down. Now, whether this is some kind of bizarre sacrifice where the ETs have allowed themselves to be shot down and killed.
Well, they're not killed. They're avatars.
As a kind of sacrifice, I don't know. But everything.
Yeah, what this insider said is they are not real flesh and blood. That's not their bodies. These are avatars, just like the movie Avatar. So yeah, they appear to have a form, but that's not really them. They come into these.
And $2 will get you a cup of coffee at Starbucks. There's a lot of information floating around. people are very upset when they don't get full answer. Unfortunately, life is not like a Hollywood movie where after 120 minutes, you pay your $10-15 to go to the movies, they give you a nice packaged ending. This is a process that's going to unfold over a very long time, and most people don't like the uncertainty. As an ER doctor, I had to work with uncertainty all the time. The thing is that if you wait for getting all the answers, the patient's dead, and so you treat simultaneously 6 or 7 different conditions while you're waiting for the lab test to come back so the patient will survive long enough for you to get the accurate diagnosis. Well, it's the same thing in life. We don't have all the answers. People are desperate for having the answers, and so they cling on to an explanation, any explanation. And what I'm suggesting is we go forward and say, what is our plan? The ETs may have a master plan for Earth civilization, but I'd rather them take our plan. And our plan, as far as I'm concerned, is world peace based on social justice and using our relationship with them in order to promote a kind of civilization that lays the foundations of kindness for everyone on this planet. And beyond that, if you want to give me an explanation about who they are or what they are, well, then we have to address the issue of the virtual experience model. And the virtual experience model that I've developed describes how the ETs, or my wife calls them the whatevers because she's not particularly interested in, the ET alien. She says, oh, whatever. So we have to tell the whatevers, we have to develop our own plan because if we don't, then we're kind of slavish to them. If we're conscious, sentient beings, we need to have our own plan, and perhaps they will continue to assist us in it. But in any case, this virtual experience model was something that I was taken through step by step by step. They staged contact experiences to show me how they can produce holographic type technology to make us see things that are not necessarily objects. So if time permits, I know you have some questions and you want to move the conversation in that direction. If time permits, I'd like to explain how UFO intel, or shall I say flying saucer central intelligence, to use the clandestine services model, how they showed me the mechanism of illusion as operation. But you may have some questions, so we have about a half an hour left, so if you have further questions.
Right.
Get to those.
Well, where do you want to take this, Sasha? Do you have any direction you want to go in?
Well, I do like the what you just suggested, Joe. But what I see from my limited perspective is that there's much that I can do directly, person to person. For example, my name is Alexander, and I meditated on Alexander the Great Killer. I'm named after this person, and I pictured all the people, the Persians and the others that Alexander had killed, and I asked in my mind, I asked for forgiveness from them, and I asked for parts of my soul that was left with them to have back. And in my mind's eye, I met the eyes of everybody that my ancestors had harmed and did the same thing. And that was my personal puja, but it really works. And the way you can start working, I find, I'm trained by Carl Rogers and others, that I can take, and other people that are trained in this method, take people from any two cultures, get them to know each other as human beings for a while, and they can work things out. When the Camp David Accords were about to fold, and Anwar Sadat and Mehem Begin and Jimmy Carter were crying together, we're grandparents, grandfathers. What kind of world are we going to leave for our kids with Egypt and Israel still in at war? And Sadat said, well, they may kill me for this back home, but I'm going for peace. And that's what it takes. Three people that loved each other as fellow grandparents. We're all people here. That's what I think.
Right. This is a beautiful sentiment, and it's something that I became aware of when I first joined the C5 initiative. And one of the things Dr. Greer shared with us is that what do we have in common with the ETs, the alleged ETs? So I'm not quite sure extraterrestrial describes them. They may be interdimensional or they may be an intelligent form of energy. But in any case, he said to me and to people he was training is that when you meet a stranger, okay, and you look into their eyes, and that person could be from another country, could be from another culture, and you look into their eyes, what do you see? You see a person who's alive and awake and knows that he or she is awake. And that's what he called the golden thread of consciousness that ties us together. And on the basis of that realization that they are awake, we are one, it can produce the most profound feelings of love and cooperation, which is at the core of all the wisdom traditions on our planet, so-called organized religion. Of course, we should also point out that God gave us spirituality, and the devil organized it as a religion. But nevertheless, we share with the non-human intelligence responsible for flying saucers that they are awake, they are beings, and they know they're awake. And this sense of unity is going to be required in order for us to not only survive, but to flourish as a civilization. So I think what you're saying is absolutely right. We need to work for peace. We need to dream of peace. We need to talk of peace. And we have to experience peace within ourselves and to empower us to continue that struggle against all kinds of adversity.
Yeah. One thing that seems to work is unilateral gifting. We're not trading, we're not making a deal, but we want peace. For example, if I were the ruling Israel, I would say Jerusalem is international. Let everybody that wants to use this place come and be here. Start by giving something instead of trying to force some competitive deal.
One planet, one people, one cosmos, one people. This will be the slogan of this huge movement that I envision. And I might even be, if I live long enough, I might be able to see it move closer to the day that we have a social movement. Right now, I call the people I work with the Contact Underground. It's a very loose amalgamation of contact workers. On the planet, there's just a couple of thousand of us. And there's independents. Many groups are being told to fly under the radar because they are having very high-level contacts, and the intelligence services should not know about it. And that gets us back to the theme that I didn't really explore before the break and cut me off, and that was that Joe Vallejo was working with Rahma in 1993, and he was complaining that because they meditated for hours and there was some kind of cult. And I said, no, that's a poor man's security service. Because you can imagine if a AFOSI guy like, say, Richard Doughty, or maybe someone who's got a little kind of more smooth operator, a Ron Pandolfi or someone like that, if they got into a Rahma meeting, intelligence operatives, some of them are spiritual, but they're, rough and ready guys. They like meat, they like to drink, they like the ladies, they like to smoke. And you put an intelligent operative with psi-capable people meditating for 2 days, no drink, no hokey pokey, no fooling around, meditating and eating vegetarian food, that person will run probably out of the Rahma meeting screaming, like, I can't stand it any longer. So right. that's when I told Joe that this is a poor man's security investigation. He got it, and he was able to overcome his concerns about them being a cult. And the proof was that some 10 months later, he's in a dimensional portal chanting Om. So it's a wonderful to see how people from all over the world are working together. I'm a left-wing guy, Jewish background, and Joe Vallejo was working on the other side. He was a refugee from the Castro dictatorship. Ordinarily people like us would be hurling insults at each other, but Joe Vallejo and I have had a great friendship. Been going on for a quarter of a century, and compared to the enormity of the task and the importance of building a cosmic peace movement, these petty terrestrial political concerns that separated Joe and I, they seem totally trivial. So, and we can leave behind us those kind of awkward struggles of our youth and play a far more positive role promoting cosmic peace.
Thank you.
Oh, yes. Okay, so you wanted to, what was it? We were talking about something, and then you went in this direction, right?
About the virtual experience model. And so what happened was, we'd go out in the desert, and this is now October of 94, and we had a team of about 7 people. And I'm noticing that there are shooting stars. And if you've ever done Skywatch, which I suspect you guys have done big time, you look at a certain section of the sky for a few minutes, you see this constellation, that constellation, and you get bored, and then you turn your head to another section of the sky. Well, what happened to me was that every time I turned my head to look at a different section of the sky, I saw a shooting star. And they all looked pretty much the same. Same color, same brightness, same angle towards the horizon. And I said to this young contact worker originally from Belarus, whose name is Misha, I said to him,
"Okay,
it happened to me 5 times. How many times has it happened to you?" And he said 20 times in a row. So already I was alerted that there was a consciousness connection between us and some non-human intelligence. And these were not shooting stars. They were visual displays. That night, another thing that happened, which was kind of curious, because the parent organization, CSETI's symbol was a triangle with a circle at each of the apices of the triangle, we noticed a tight constellation of stars forming an equilateral triangle in a part of the western sky that we had never seen such a constellation. So we all started looking at it quietly, and apparently the intelligence behind UFOs were waiting, because when the whole team finally were quietly looking at this triangle made up of 3 stars in a constellation we had never seen before, one of them started, and we watched it for about 5-10 minutes, perfectly still. One of them moved and started flying away, and then the other 2 chased after it. Okay? And stars in a constellation aren't supposed to do that. So the following month, it was just Misha and I at our favorite field laboratory, base of Queen Mountain, 4,500-foot elevation in Joshua Tree. And we were there in November of 1994. And we were celebrating the year anniversary. We had had a prolonged interactive experience the previous year where we had several UFOs that came very close to us. And they were putting out perhaps some UV radiation because we both got sunburned at night. And the side of our faces that were closest to the illuminated disc that got in within less than a half a mile of our position, it had come up on our right side. And so sort of like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where Richard Dreyfuss got half his face sunburned. Right. Well, it wasn't that dramatic, but it was clearly one side was brighter than the other. And so we had this great experience in 93, and so we said, okay, year anniversary, they're going to put on a show for us. And they did, but it was not the show that I expected. we'd already been alerted that shooting stars could be anomalous and that they appeared to be possibly linked to consciousness. And so I'm looking at Negri Hill, which is a prominence of, it goes up about 600 feet. It's on the Little Queen Valley. And I'm looking there, and my vision was quite good. I didn't need glasses for another 5 years. And so I'm staring at the Negri Hill, and my coworker, Misha, says, there's another one. And I go, what? He said, I just saw a shooting star above Negri Hill. I was staring at that same location, and I saw nothing. So I said to him, how many have you seen? He said, I've seen 2. And I said, were they exactly the same? Yes. Same angle, same brightness. I then had him point, and I looked down his arm like the barrel of a gun, and I said, show me exactly where it was. And as I'm staring, looking at that exact spot, he says, there's another one. And I saw nothing. Nothing at all. Well, my heart starts to beat because I'm realizing that these are not shooting stars. They're anomalous visual displays, and they seem to be linked to consciousness. So I say to Mish, I said, okay, have them show me. And just like that, snap, he said, show Dr. Burkes. Immediately, I saw a faint shooting star in the exact location that he had pointed out, that he had seen 3 in a row. This was his 4th. Same angle, same brightness, same color. Now my heart's beginning to beat even more because they're showing me how they can create illusion. And so I say, okay, that's good. Could you please show me again? So Misha says, show Joe. Immediately, like that. In the exact location, I see another shooting star that looks just like the one that I had seen and the 4 other that he had seen. Now my heart's pounding because I'm saying, this is showtime. This is show and tell. And so I don't know who I'm talking to because it's just the 2 of us, you know, on 4,500-foot elevation and all by ourselves in the middle of the Little Queen Valley. And so I say, I don't know who I'm talking to. I say, you know, I guess Misha was there. And I said, we have this thing on planet Earth called coincidence. And people will say, oh, Dr. Burkes, he's a really good ER doctor, takes good care of his patients. But he comes to his astronomy, he doesn't know his ass from his elbow. And it's just coincidence. So could you show me, please, one more time? Because, you know, 2 is good, but 3 makes it very unlikely to be coincidence. And so Misha says, show Joe. And I wait 5 seconds. I wait 10 seconds. Whereas the others were just like that, snap of your finger. They waited, and this pause was pregnant. And what it was saying to me is, don't you know what we're doing, Joe? And about 10 seconds later, a very faint shooting star that looked exactly like the 3 others. Well, these are visual displays. They're not shooting stars. The ETs, or whoever they are, the whatevers, as my wife calls them, aren't flying in a spaceship, firing out pieces of ice, matching the Earth's rotation to their direction of flight, so that they can put visual displays of shooting stars in the same location time and time again. They're using some other kind of technology, perhaps holographic, or perhaps they're even able to stimulate the occipital visual centers of the backs of the brain to create visual displays that don't represent objects. This is a very important piece of information, because if they can do that with shooting stars, any kind of object you imagine or they imagine, they can co-create with you and put holographic-like displays that we call craft. And if this is true, then organizations like MUFON, which does a really good job in charting sightings and is an important resource, and Jan Harzan is a friend. I met him in 1994. I've been a member of MUFON, well, pretty much on for the last 25 years. That MUFON may be chasing shadows, though what they are calling sightings are holographic visual displays that don't represent physical objects. That's quite a bit. And then we seem to be running out of time. I could go on a little bit more because there was another encounter that I had with Misha.
Well, I'd like to comment on that. Just that was an interesting thing that you expressed. And it's not mutually exclusive. There could be some of the projection and some real things. That's why it's so confusing.
Absolutely. It's not either or. It's
yeah,
both.
It's not either or, right. So we can't really tell. I mean, we interview all these people that have had experiences, and I'm not like there to, people can't prove it. Prove it. What is proof? So, what is proof? What would constitute proof?
Well, we're not talking about science now, okay? And this is another pet peeve. We're not talking about science. We're talking about an intelligence.
So we're doing testimonials.
We're talking about an intelligence operation. Both on one side, you've got the executive branch of the government that's following contact experiences around and tapping their phones and getting pieces of wreckage and that sort of thing. And then you've got the intelligence behind the phenomena that's directly interacting over the heads of the ruling elites with the everyday citizens of our planet. And so given that dynamic, it's very important for us to understand the mechanisms of contact. Because if we're going to build a people's cosmic peace movement, we have to have the most accurate information as possible. And the fact that, and I believe it's a fact, although people will say it's just wild speculation, I have other contact experiences that reinforce the virtual experience model of how they use illusion as a mechanism of contact. So I have a VE1, which is a virtual sighting, virtual experience of the first kind. I've hypothesized that we have contact experiences employing the VE2, which is a virtual experience of the second kind, which is a full sensory virtual reality that's so real, like in the movie Matrix, is more real than real. So many contact experiencers who believe they've been on board spacecraft probably have been put into a kind of Matrix reality, and they don't go anywhere, but they have memories, both wonderful in terms of being a contactee or terrible for people who feel they've been abused, the abductees. And it's important to note that there are cases in the literature that support the creation of virtual reality. They haven't been promoted because this notion is very frightening. They can also do virtual experience of the third kind, which is virtual memory. Alien abduction theorists always talk about the existence of screen memories, which are memories allegedly used to block the experiencer's awareness of what actually happened during the close encounter with the alien or being on board spacecraft. But it's important to think about the possibility that what if the entire memory of the contact experience is like a screen memory? It's an impregnated memory. It's not, people are remembering.
What's the purpose of this? Who's doing it, and why are they doing? Why do they bother and waste their time doing all that? Creating a false. And we've talked about all this. These are things all of us have talked about. Like, what is this? What's your idea on that?
The ETs are physical beings, and they're being shot and killed, and maybe captured and maybe even dissected. Who knows what goes on deep within the national security state? And you have material that can be shot down, and you have beings that can be killed. What better way to alert a civilization that they exist without putting their people and their craft in jeopardy than to use the power of illusion? I think it makes sense. If you're flying over hostile territory, why not use visual displays that will allow people on the planet to be aware of their presence, but not put their people and material in harm's way? Same thing with so-called abductions. Think of the space bucks that the so-called aliens would have to spend. Well, they're not buying gas for their air. We decided that. They're using some kind of free energy. But think of how elaborate the preparations would have to be to fly over a house, knock the bedmate of the experiencer out, grab them, float them up to the craft, have them interact, run around the craft, whatever, and then put them back in the bed, hopefully in the right bed, and they don't wake up with somebody else. That would be awkward. If you had a technology...
Well, sometimes they wake up outside and around clothes.
Pardon, what was that?
Sometimes they wake up outside or in the wrong clothes. Yeah, we have all these reports, but that seems pretty elaborate right there. What you're saying is that it would be difficult for them. It's nothing for us to take all of our chickens and cows and mark them and brand them. It might just be a product for them, and they're just keeping track of their inventory.
Well,
that's one of the theories.
You asked the reason why they might do this, and I've given you two.
Yeah, go ahead.
One is
okay.
Because virtual craft, holographic projections, can't be shot down, and the crews can't be killed or captured. In staging encounters, rather than having to put their, again, people in harm's way and having to go through this elaborate thing, all they have to do, this is highly speculative, of course, but all they have to do is have the psychotronic technology, which a civilization that's not 1,000 years, but maybe 1,000,000 years more advanced than we have, and use their tremendous psi ability to create a virtual reality where all kinds of interactions can occur, but are not physical, they're psychic. And as far as the virtual memory goes, it's a sort of extension of the other consideration. Virtual memory allows you to alert large numbers of people about the contact experience without physically having to stage encounters. So people wake up in the morning, a husband and wife team, they say to each other, wow, wasn't it great, that UFO that we saw last night? However, what they experienced last night was driving home, going to bed, and during the night, the same memory was implanted into both of them, which they would recall as if it had been a physical event. This is the power of a civilization that perhaps has lived for 1,000,000 years under conditions of peace and cooperation. And I suspect that if we band together and to work for peace and to dream peace and to speak about peace, our civilization will survive as well. And we will be able to develop similar capabilities in the centuries to come.
Okay. Sasha, comments, questions, feedback?
Yeah, I'm interested. It seems to me that there's a very different character about military and intelligence kidnapping of people, and these seem to be very physical. And the people I've interviewed give me a reason to believe that it wasn't just something in a holographic fashion, but that there was really military people that were pushing everybody around in a most brutal way.
I'm not talking about a black ops or military abductions. The question we're addressing is the virtual experience model, which applies to UFO intelligence. I'm not saying that the U.S. has those capabilities. I think they would love to have it. Just think the power that the rulers could, if they could employ this technology to control the masses. But I don't think they have it. I think
what I'm saying is that Swerdlow and others who were in Montauk talk about how people are given trauma to split them into alters that can then be accessed for the purpose of the person that split them. Does that seem like total fiction to you?
Well, actually, about 25 years ago, there was a work written by forgetting its name. It was called The Controllers, I think it was. And it was a review of all the mind control technology going back to the Second World War with LSD experiments and development of psychotronic and microwaves to affect consciousness. So I think those developments are ongoing. It's really hard to say how far they've gotten along, but interviewing people who believe they have had Miller Labs is a very important part of the process. And I don't have any information about the Montauk experiment, but I would suggest that special sections of the intelligence services have been working on this, and I think it will probably be a long time before they come close to what the so-called ETs can do. But as I said, I don't really know that much about what the military is doing. For me, it's more important to understand how UFO intelligences are using illusion, because that will enable us to basically level the playing field a little bit. If we know how they do what they do, know how they interact with us, it will give us a sense of empowerment. And this is very important when dealing with an advanced civilization, that we don't turn them into, like I said before, Jesus Christ in a spaceship and worship them, as perhaps ancient civilizations have done, or we demonize them and say they're the devil. So knowing how they do what they do and advancing human knowledge is a very important part of the process.
Got it.
So
how do we get hold of you?
Go ahead, Josh.
And how to get you? How do people get your books and your website and contact to the max? Because we want to use this time for you.
Okay, pitch time, right.
Last 2 minutes. Yes,
Well, I don't have any books that I've written with my own name as the sole writer, but I've contributed to some very important efforts, one of which is Beyond UFOs. Preston Dennett and I were allowed access to the amazing records of the Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial and Extraordinary Experiences. And out of those 4,000 people who responded, we went over about 10 cases of people who had UFO healings. And that chapter 6 is available for purchase, also as a free download. Ray Hernandez was offering our chapter. So you can check out the free website, and you can also purchase Beyond UFOs Volume 1. The first 50 pages of True Stories, Paths to Contact, edited by Mr. Jeff Becker. I have a 50-page chapter in that book as well that describes my work, and that's called Paths to Contact, True Stories from the Contact Underground. Jeffrey Becker is the editor. So go ahead and purchase books. You can see my work on YouTube.
and how'd you get a 100-plus-year-old tortoise?
Oh, I've got a 100-year-old tortoise named Moses, or we call him Moshe, which is Moses in Hebrew. He's actually,
oh wow!
He's 106 now.
How'd you get her?
We got him from someone in Southern California who had him for 40 years, and before Moses, another.
Oh wow! Well, we're out of time. Thank you very much. Aloha. Thanks for coming on. Aloha, love and blessings.
Okay.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message. Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Any commercial advertising you may hear in this program is of the sole discretion and benefit of the host of whose program you are listening to. Revolution Radio does not endorse any commercial products, nor does it accept monetary compensation for on-air advertising of commercial products, nor will it ever. We are and shall remain 100% listener supported. Any product advertising on this program are considered used at buyer risk, and Revolution Radio shall not be held liable for any claims or damages received from any product advertised within this program. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Thanks for tuning in to Revolution Radio. Here at Revolution Radio, we are listener-sponsored and commercial-free. But there still are bills to pay. In order to raise some needed funds to cover the cost, our station is offering a silver special. In the continental United States for a $60 donation, or in Alaska, Hawaii, or Canada for a $70 donation, we will send you an uncirculated 2018 1-ounce pure silver Eagle. The $70 donation, the extra 10 is to cover shipping, by the way, outside of the continental United States. When making the donation, you must put Silver Eagle promo in the notes on the donation. And thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio at revolution.radio and freedomslips.com. Without you, there is no us. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.